What's going on, crew? Welcome to an edition of the Clinic Growth Secrets Show. This is Jeff VK in the studio today, bringing you another edition, a very powerful marketing episode today coming at you. Before we get into the goods, as usual, we do have a fee for the show. We certainly don't ask for any monetary donations, although if you want to hit me on Venmo, you're welcome to. But we certainly don't ask for it. All we do ask is that if you get value from the show today, just make sure you pay the content forward. We do grow organically around here. We don't, it's all word of mouth. We don't spend money on ads. We don't want to fill your ears full of stuff you don't want to hear. So that being said, if you get value, share the show. And if you don't get value, don't share it. That's how it works. Okay. So today I'm hyped because we are revisiting a very powerful guest. I'm here in the studio today with Dr. Stephen Franson. Some of you guys may know him from the #1 chiropractic podcast in the world, the Remarkable CEO podcast. And we're going to talk all about marketing money math today. In fact, you guys are going to have a lot of tactical stuff that you guys can take right to the bank, right to your clinics to improve your marketing, improve the way you look at patient attraction. And there's no better person to have on the show talking about this than Dr. Stephen Franson. Dr. Franson, thanks for being here, brother.
What's up, JVK? Always a pleasure, brother. Thanks for asking me back.
Man, great to have you here. And I think this is going to be a big one. And for those that are listening, we're going to have something special for you guys at the end, too. A little bit of a free giveaway that goes with this conversation today. So make sure you check that out. Take it for yourself. It's just a really, really good tool that these guys have put together for you. So we want to talk today about marketing money math, okay? And we're going to do a little bit of screen sharing for those that are on the YouTube. If you're listening on audio, we do this on YouTube as well, and we're going to be doing some screen sharing that will add context today. But first and foremost, I think that the #1 thing is people are somewhat afraid or maybe undereducated on what the money marketing math looks like, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Doc, what's your #1 thing? I think you always say people are just straight up not spending enough, but I think that there's a lot deeper presence than that. Like, what are you seeing in your community that maybe stops people directly in their tracks in their marketing?
Yeah, Jeff, I think it is epidemic in chiropractic that we're underspending when it comes to marketing. So marketing dollars are like oxygen into the machine. If you're a car guy, there's a mix of fuel and oxygen and spark that makes that engine combust, right? So you think of the money that you're putting in and investing, not just spending, but investing in your marketing in an intelligent way. If you're robbing that engine of oxygen, you're just robbing the machine of horsepower, right? So just robbing ourselves of our potential. So there's accepted standards we can get into today. But I want to double click on that word intelligent. Right. So it's so important that we are running data-driven businesses. And I think that'll be a big part of today's conversation, is for most entrepreneurs and most entrepreneurial chiropractors, there's a lot of emotion, right? So there's a lot of emotion around their business. And there's definitely a lot of emotion, which I'm sure you get to deal with full frontal. In the marketing side of things, right? So we have so much wrapped up in the marketing and lead generation and new patients, et cetera. There's so much drama, like so much emotion around this part of our business, right? So I think that's so important for people to recognize that the way to mitigate that is through data, right? So I like to say that drama is inversely proportional to data, right? So, I don't have emotions. I have metrics. Right? So I save all my emotions for the passion of our messaging and taking care of people and inspiring people to invest in their health and make the hard changes that they need to make to reach their health goals. Like I save all my passion for that, for the messaging, not for the business side of it. Right. So I say you should be 1 part gut, 2 parts data. Right. So and that's going to tamp down so much of that drama and that emotion that makes us make bad decisions and be a terrible leader, because nobody wants to work for a crazy person, right? So if you want to get a handle on that, if I'm speaking to you right now, this data conversation is going to really help you.
I love that. And I think, to be fair to all the audience too, there's a level of probably where do I begin? And I think that's where this conversation is going to really provide a lot of value. And so I guess the intent of our conversation today is twofold, right? If you're just getting started and you're listening, you're trying to really get deep into the marketing game, we want to give you a place to start. The second is if you're already in the game and you want to make your marketing efforts better, we want to teach you some different metrics to look at inside of your marketing outside of just cost per lead that will have a big influence on the way you perceive your own marketing and how you continue to invest in your practice. We're going to begin by doing a little bit of screen sharing here. And Dr. Franson is going to walk us through some of these metrics that are not only important but required for scaling a successful practice. And this is something that you guys again can take right away with you. We wanted to make this episode super tactical so you can listen and execute right away. And so as we get into this screen share here, this is the little freebie we're going to be able to give you guys here. Okay, you're going to be able to download this in the show notes. And we're going to spend the bulk of our conversation today talking about these metrics. Okay, so we're going to begin, if you're watching on YouTube or you're watching the video version on Spotify, we're going to begin on the top left. Dr. Franson, start us off, okay? The general marketing principles. Let's talk through these.
So I think I'll put a disclaimer on this so that we can throw our arms around everybody here, right? So the reality is you said it already. Some people are like, where do I begin? Just begin where you are, right? So this is about progression, not perfection, right? So we always want to be able to say, okay, this is where I am. Brutal facts. That's the love language of the remarkable practice. And you hear that a lot on the CEO podcast is just brutal facts. Like, where are you today, right? So, and there are standards out there that should help you, right, become a better leader and specifically a better marketer. And ultimately, what I want to do is I want this to be a blessing for people where if they understand what the standards are and what the best practices are, it should give you confidence, right? So it should give you hope. It should give you confidence because I really want people to be bold, right? So, we're in the business of saving lives. So when business is good, everybody wins. We should act like it, right? And we should market like it, right? So, I'm a passionate chiropractor, right? So I've got a passionate message and I want to get the word out to everybody. Well, the reality is that's going to have some associated expense. There's going to be cost to that. There's going to be some investments that need to be made. But if you don't know what the standards are or best practices are, it's like you're kind of like guessing on this. And, at the end of the day, if you're guessing, you're stressing. And I want to make sure that people are just like, well, here are the best practices. This is not a Franson idea. This is not coming from JVK. This is business best practices, right? So ultimately, when we talk about setting a budget for a business, a growth-oriented business, you should be investing 8 to 12% of your top line revenue goal. Now, I'm going to say that again because for some of you, this is a holy shit moment for you when you start doing that math in your head. It's like, did he say top line revenue? Yes. And did he just say goal, like where I want to go? Right. So it's not just 8 to 12% of your current production, right? Collections revenue. It's where do you want to land? Like, where are you trying to go in this quarter, in this year, et cetera, right? So number one, that's making the assumption that you are setting goals, right? So, which I hope everybody here is. So set that goal. Let's just talk about revenue for now. Set that, the by end of 2024, big, hairy, audacious goal, your BHAG, right? For 2024, to quote Jim Collins, where do you want the business to be, by December collections, right? So, and then you say, where are you today as we're just starting now, third quarter? What is your NHAG, your next happily achievable goal by the end of third quarter? In September, I want to be at this point in collections, right? So, and recognize that's your next goal. So calculate what is 8 to 12% of where I want to land in that time period. And that will give you a great guide for how much should you be investing. And you guys hear me emphasize that word, investing intelligently, underline both of those words, in order for you to have the sufficient marketing to fuel that growth, right? So if you're trying to go to the moon, they can calculate how much fuel are you going to need to have in the tank to get you to the moon. And trust me, if you knew, hey, we need to have 100,000 gallons of fuel in this tank to get to the moon, if you were climbing on that podium looking at getting into that capsule and they said, but we're going to try to do it with just 60,000, you'd be like, I ain't going, man. I'm
Dude,
just
I'm
not
out.
going to
I'm
go
out.
there. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm out. Right. So put the monkey back in. Right. So it's like, I'll wait until you put the fuel in the tank. It's literally that much of a predictor. So again, it's a holy crap moment for so many people, but the reality is you might be doing the math right now being like, I'm not even at 1%, 2% or whatever. Great. You know what's better than 2%? 3%. Right. So what's better than 3%? 4 or 5%, right? So, and just be able to just incrementally work this in so you're not cash strapping your business and sucking the oxygen out of the other primary functions of the business, but you're at least creating enough of an investment trajectory where you're giving yourself a fighting chance, right? So give yourself a fighting chance to get into that marketplace and invest. So I'm hoping that this standard, Jeff, is going to give people the confidence to be bold and to embrace best practices to increase their chances of succeeding.
I love that, brother. I love that. That's such a good analogy with the moon thing too, dude. If we need 100,000 and we're only putting, I'm out, dude. You know, like you said, it's too dangerous at that rate. Like we're just not willing to put the requirements. And I think that's back to you mentioned the brutal facts again, Jim Collins, legend. Um, at the end of the day, it's like there's a level of like how things should be or we wish they were in our head versus how they actually are. And so I think if we want to just match our goals to the actuality of achieving them, like the first step is like the general marketing budget. Are we spending enough to get to the moon? You know what I mean?
That's right. That's right. And it is a high level generalization. Okay. So I just want to make sure you guys understand that we are just nicking the tip of the iceberg as we're coaching you through this right now. But I'm just trying to start with like the biggest, highest level concepts because unpacking underneath marketing, you've got internal marketing, you got external marketing, you got digital marketing, and there needs to be a distribution across those. You should be able to see an allocation of new patients coming in from multiple tributaries, right? So a diversification in your sources of new patients. Some of you are sitting here like, yeah, that sounds great, Franson, but I ain't got no money, right? So, they get into what we call the money gap, right? With the money gap is I don't have any money, so I can't do the marketing I need to do to attract the new patients that will drive growth. So I don't have the new patient revenue, so I don't have money, so I don't do the marketing, right? So you can see that money, that cycle, right? That it's like an eddy that people get caught in, right? So we help coach people over that by teaching them what you can do for low cost and no cost to create internal referrals and how to parlay every new patient into 2 or 3 new patients, which then you can allocate a certain percentage of those new monies, those new revenues towards your marketing, which now you can start to snowball and leverage. You can see it, Jeff, right? Like we get it.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that everybody feels cash strapped, right? Right. At some point, there are solutions around that. And I don't want to oversimplify things. You're like, yeah, that sounds great, Franson. If you had that kind of money, we can actually teach you how to generate and create that kind of money internally so that you can then fund your new patient machine.
Mm-hmm. Back to 2 ways to grow the business: time or money. You know, if you don't have the money, you've got the time, and if don't have the time, you probably have the cash, right?
That's exactly right.
So basically, in that sense, like, hey, like look back to your main tribe, develop referral systems, and then honestly, like for one thing that we did in our business, we teach our docs to do is just direct outreach. You have followers on your Facebook page, you have followers on your Instagram page. Some of those guys and gals, they live local to you. We can reach out, we can start conversations. Yeah, it takes time, it takes work, but it'll get you the cash required to then invest in the beast.
100%. 100%. Everybody knows the best patient is a referred patient. So we teach our coaching clients how to generate those referrals from all sorts of new patients, whether the origination of the new patient was from an internal referral or from external activities or from digital marketing. So probably a conversation for a different day.
100%. Easy low hanging fruit though. If you're like, man, I'm doing $5,000 a month, how do I get to 10? Low hanging fruit right there.
100%.
So as we get into this top of the sheet here, we talked about general marketing budget, 8 to 12% of your top line goal. The goal is kind of the underline there. And then as we get into some of these other ones, most people are familiar with cost per lead. Okay, we're looking on the top left again here. Cost per lead, CPL, cost per acquisition, CAC. Let's talk a little bit about those, though. Cost of acquisition and CAC. Can we linger on that for a second?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you've got a certain amount of investment that has to happen, whether you're doing it internally or externally or digitally. So there's going to be some kind of investment to create the energy, to create the attraction of these new patients, right? So you should be able to track those monies spent, right? So getting back to the data, and you should have reporting systems in place to give you visibility and meeting rhythms in place to create accountability on your team, right? So if you are internally, let's say you've got a check-in CA who's accountable to your internal referrals, right? So there should be a tracking mechanism in place, a reporting system, we call it, and a meeting rhythm so that they know, hey, I'm accountable to that. And you have a meeting rhythm so that they understand, I'm going to be reporting against these metrics, et cetera. So you do the same thing for external. You do the same thing for digital. If you're working with a contracted external expert like yourself, right? You should have a conversation, you should have communication, and you should have metrics that you are focused on to make sure that you are tracking. So ultimately you can get to determine your return on investment, right? So ultimately you can optimize your efforts so you're getting the greatest juice for the squeeze, right? So it all, once again, goes back to metrics, right? So one part gut, two parts data. Your gut is your instincts, right? So never abandon that. Like a good entrepreneur has always got a good gut, right? They've got good instincts, but you want to buttress those instincts with the metrics, with the data, right? So I would say, like, who cares what I think? What do the numbers say, right? What does the data say, right? So having the ability to be able to calculate your return on investment is the primary goal here. So you need to know, like, what is my spend, and then what is my cost to acquire a customer, or CAC, right? So a CPA, cost per acquisition, is another way to look at it. We do separate those two as different, right? So that includes our reactivation. CPA, cost per acquisition, includes reactivation of new patients, which is very often low cost or no cost, right? So that's how we sort of differentiate those and get the net in totality. What are we spending on generating that new patient, or that new business, that new revenue, right? So, and being able to just say, what does it cost us to attract not just a lead, not just a new patient day one, not just an opportunity, not just a report of findings, but an actual converted new patient, right? So now I have a bona fide active patient who's a paying customer, right? So you want to be able to extrapolate that out and set standards around that, and have an understanding of, like, what is your CAC, what is your cost to acquire a customer, and then looking at that and saying, well, what kind of revenue was generated by that acquisition, right? So, and the number you need to be able to use there is either case average and or lifetime value, LTV, and that's going to allow you to calculate your ROI, or your return of investment. Excuse me, return on investment. Return of investment is a different story.
So the CAC is excluding the CPA, including reactivation. Let's just assume the assumption of new people right now. So the CAC is cost to acquire a new patient, not leads, not shows, but somebody to say yes to care.
That's
what does that cost you? Ad spend
correct.
wise, are we factoring labor into this in terms of staff? Are we doing that? That might be the question somebody may have. I was like, are we factoring in all the hard costs, ad spend, agency fee if I'm using an agency, my time, possibly my staff's time? Are we including all that?
So that's a great question. So you're going to capture those expenses elsewhere in the business. Like in a service business, you'll typically see a couple of different ways that we categorize our expenses in our accounting, right? So you've got COGS. People know what COGS is, cost of goods sold. If you're selling pillows, you have to buy the pillow and then sell the pillow, right? That's a COG, right? And then there's COSD, which is costs of services delivered, right? Which are the direct and indirect costs associated with delivering healthcare, for example. Now, those are different overheads, and they'll be captured in payroll. The one place that I do tease out the marketing expenses is for the marketing budget. So people are like, how do you get to 8 to 12%? I'm like, well, I have a CMO who's like a top dollar CMO. So her dedicated purpose in the business is lead generation. So that's tucked up underneath the budget when I'm trying to get to that 8 to 12% of my top line revenue goal in our company, right? So that's where that would belong. Your agency fee would belong under the marketing budget for sure, right? So as you guys are a contracted fractional marketing expert, you do nothing else in that business except for market. So I would absolutely capture your agency fee and your ad spend up underneath the marketing budget for sure.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. So the general marketing budget includes agency fees. If you're having a staff internally do something, we don't obviously recommend that crazy if you're past scale, but if you're having someone do that, probably their labor. And then if you're doing the cost to acquire the customer, you're just essentially taking, okay, we acquired 10 new patients. It cost us $2,000 to get those, all in agency fee and ad spend. That would be $200 CAC.
That's correct. That's
Got
correct.
it.
Yep. And at the end of the day, people can kind of go crazy and they start splitting hairs when it comes to metrics. Here's a rule of thumb that we teach in our Remarkable CEO program is it's about accuracy, not precision. Okay. So we're not trying to land airplanes on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the night in the pitch black, right? So we want to be accurate. It may not be precise, but let's just remember what the purpose of metrics really is. The reason you want data, the reason you want metrics as a leader, as a business owner, is because it informs your actions. In other words, it tells you what you need to be investing your time, energy, focus, and money in, right? So that's what metrics are for, right? So your metrics, if you look at them, the metrics will become the matrix. In other words, it becomes a story. And your business will talk to you if you learn how to speak metrics, right? So we call them vital signs. If you learn how to speak data, your business wants to talk to you, and it's going to tell you where you need to focus, where we need to make an investment, where we need to have maybe more people or different people. Maybe we need to do some training and developing of our people, et cetera. But your business will talk to you through the metrics if you learn how to speak it.
Well said, man. And could we define for those that are listening, we talked about accurate versus precise. What might be the difference in those two? Just to linger on that for a hot second.
So accuracy. If I love to shoot, right? So I shoot guns.
Yeah.
So if you have a target in front of you, if you're on bullseye, right? So that would be being accurate. Okay. So whereas if you were off bullseye, but your field of hits where you had a cloud that was all tight into one little, even though if you were off bullseye, that would be an example of precision, right? So
Yep.
of course you want to be accurate and precise, right? So precision is just like, yeah, that's exactly dialed into like one place. Accuracy in this situation is just, hey, you know what? I know that this is close enough to be useful, and I'm not paralyzed by the fact that it might not be perfect.
Makes complete sense. Complete sense. Kind of relates to what we talk about on the show, acceptable metrics, right? It's like, so for our clients, like typically see for chiropractic lead gen anywhere between $40 and $60 leads, like cost per opportunity, depending on the offer in the marketplace, right? So that would be acceptable. It's accurate. It falls within that space there. Now, if I'm hitting $80 leads constantly, I'm precisely at 80, but that doesn't mean that it's accurate. It doesn't mean that's acceptable, you know? So I think as we go through and, like when you're defining your cost per lead by the reverse engineer strategy, we'll talk about, I always joke that it's like, sure, you can set your lead cost goal to be $1 per lead. The problem with that is that you're just going to constantly think that's the bottleneck because you're never going to hit that. So it's not going to allow you to accurately assess where the true bottleneck is either. So that's the importance of just having back to all these metrics so dialed in.
Yeah. And I mean, you bring a very important point. So I like to say that one number is a fact, two numbers are a story. Right. So we just want to be really careful that we don't get too fixated on just like one number. There's almost always a complement number that will flesh out the story. Right. So you could say, oh, a $40 cost per acquisition is great, or an $80 one is better or worse or what have you. Right. So that may be true. Right. So, but I don't know. Right. So because there's a second number I would need to know. Right. So I would need to know what's your lifetime value or what's your case average, right? So, because what matters to me is ROI, what's the return on the investment? So, I think it's very smart to know all the numbers, but you have to understand what the numbers tell you, okay? So, if we get too fixated, it's like, oh man, we went from a $30 cost per acquisition to a $40 cost per acquisition, the sky's falling. It's like, yeah, but your lifetime value is $8,800, right? So, it's like, are you going to stop marketing for new patients because you just went from $30 to that $10 increase in the lead generation that's going to have a lifetime value of $8,000? Is it really, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to ask, what's the complement number so I can make an intelligent decision contextually.
All that, it just avoids the danger in marketing of aggressive short-term changes without having the story. Like you said, one number tells the fact, two numbers tell the story. So it's like if you don't have these numbers to compare the whole acquisition system, you might see your lead cost go from 40 to 50 over the course of a week, and you might shut it down. It's not working. It used to work. We used to get 40, now we're getting 50. It's not working. But the story tells a lot different if we look through the whole holistic approach.
Exactly. You always have to consider effectiveness and efficiency, right? So we talked about return of investment, which is an economic figure. What about return of investment, right? Which is a time-bound figure, right? So it's like, well, what if your return on your investment was 3x or 5x, right? So put 100 out, I get 500 back. That's a 5x return on my investment, right? It's like, isn't that great? I'm like, I don't know. It's a fact. One number is a fact. What's the return of your investment? In other words, time bound. Oh, it takes me 5 years to get that $500 back. It's like, I don't know if that's a good use of my capital, right? So there's capital money has a velocity to it in business. So you want to be sensitive to like, how quickly does that money come back so they can redeploy and reinvest and continue to grow?
God, such a key component of all this conversation too. Um, we talk about just trying to liquidate cash in the first 30 days. So like, let's say you spend 5 grand a month on acquisition, agency fee, ad spend, whatever it is. You want to try to get as much of that 5 grand back. That's the return of investment, the time variable. Try to get that 5 grand back as quickly as you can to liquidate that spend so that you can go back and then reinvest in the business growth, you know? So this actually translates well. So we talk about CAC and lifetime value. How are those two things related? So someone's like, okay, man, I know what my lifetime value is. How do I know what would be an acceptable CAC though? Because if I know an acceptable cost of acquisition to get a new patient, then on paper I can reverse engineer all the metrics based on my show percentage, my conversion percentage, my booking percentage, everything in between. So how are those LTV? How is LTV and CAC related as you see?
Yeah, and again, I would introduce that third number of time, right? So that is a bit of an asterisk on it, right? So just we're the more data you add typically, and I'm sure that there's diminishing returns on what I'm about to say, but the more data, you're going to make better decisions, right? So to be able to have all three of those numbers, you can pretty much make up your mind on,
Mm-hmm.
if I know what it costs me to acquire a customer, CAC, and I know what the lifetime value is of the customer, and I know which is going to be able to which allows me to calculate return on investment, right? Which is that 3x, 5x, 10x, right? The last thing I just need to know is, well, how long does it take you to see that return, right? So again, it gets into that velocity question. So I think there's tolerances. People are like, I like 3 times at a minimum. I like 6 times as a goal. 10 to 12 times is always, when you're optimized. I'm the type of person that always looks at every single system and just asks the questions: is it optimized on a scale of 0 to 10, and who owns it? Right, which is exactly how you use this tool that we're giving away. This tool is something that our high-paying premium clients pay for. So we're giving you this tool, and the way you use this across all 5 domains, you're going to see there's 5 domains at the top: attraction, conversion, retention, team building, and collections, right? So attraction is marketing, lead generation. Conversion is sales, right? Compelling others to invest in your services to solve their problems and reach their goals, right? So retention is delivery, right? Creating value, delivering value. And then this team building, which is all of your HR functions, which is, I think, is the most important part of business. And then collections, right? The business office. Well, that's the 5 categories across the top. And what you'll see underneath are the 3 subcategories. So there's 3 times 5, there's 15, we call them primary functions of the business, right? So these are the 15 primary functions of your business. I challenge anyone, however you practice as a chiropractor, your business is going to fit inside of these 15. Like, you can throw anything at me and I'll be like, yep, it belongs here, right? So
For sure.
inside of these 15 primary functions. And just like you'll see we blew up the attraction metrics here, or the attraction domain, and we added the metrics there. There are KPIs, key performance indicators, and metrics inside of each and every one of these domains and subdomains, or the primary functions. And so you can ask the questions: is it optimized on a scale of 0 to 10? And secondly, who owns it? Who's accountable to it, right? So the first question: is it optimized? 0 to 10, score it. 9s and 10s, Jeff, mean we're going to hit our goals this quarter if we keep tracking the way we're doing. 8s mean we're wicked close, and if we have a really strong finish, we're going to hit it. 7s are, we're wicked close, but we're not going to hit it. 5s are worse than 7, 3s are worse than 5s, 1s are worse than 3s, right? So you grade it, right? So, and have everybody in your team grade, is it optimized based on that standard, right? And the second question is probably the more important one, which is who owns it? In other words, who's accountable? Okay. And in the remarkable practice, we say owning it does not mean doing it. It means you're accountable to it, right? So you're the person that owns that primary function of the business. You know everything about it. What does it look like? What's the vision of success? What are the goals? What are we going to do to achieve those goals? Who owns what? Who does what? When are we doing it? How did we do? What were the outcomes? Are we on track or off track? Why are we on track? Why are we off track, right? What are we going to do about that? Where do we need to invest, et cetera, right? So that's the person that raises their hand at team meeting when you're going through your metrics and your scoreboard. They say, that's my number. I'll tell this team everything about it. So I hope this tool is a blessing for everybody. We focused here high level on marketing metrics, but you can imagine there's a lot of meat on these bones, right? So there's a lot of metrics here. And if you're truly going to optimize your business and, dare I say, create a remarkable practice, as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one, creating the business that supports your remarkable life, not competes with it, then this accountability chart here, this grid, excuse me, contains all of the metrics that you'll need to become that remarkable leader. That's 1 part gut, 2 parts data.
Absolutely brilliant. And that's why everyone, if you're listening, if you're watching on YouTube, you got the whole value because we were talking through the sheet, but definitely make sure you go down there and download this material. It'll actually give you guys a chance to go to Dr. Franson and his team's website, The Remarkable Practice. They've got a wicked awesome event coming up here in October in the good old city of Denver, all about patient attraction and bringing people into the business. And so again, if you're kind of like, man, like, I need to get involved with this, with Doc and his team, and I've really gotten a lot of value, I would highly encourage you attend one of the events. I think you'd be more than mind blown. We've been honored to be a part of those ourselves over the last 3 or 4 events here. So, guys, definitely download this. One thing, just last question of the day that someone might be thinking, and this is always something that comes to mind. We were talking, 3 to 6 times LTV, CAC, all that stuff, return on investment. What if how does profitability of a business play into factor of that, though? Like, would it be something that if your business was a lot less profitable, you would need a higher ratio of that? I just wonder if people thinking like, man, my business is such a low margin clinic. Maybe I have a lot of machines I'm paying for, or a lot of staff. How does that play in, just to linger for 1 second?
Yeah, revenues are about vanity, profits are about sanity, right?
Word,
And
dude.
cash flow is king.
Cash is
So,
king.
yeah, this is all about modeling, Jeff. So definitely a bigger conversation, right? But you would be able to set your goals in, not just top line revenue goals, but setting your goals like, what is my requisite return on investment, right? So you would have to be able to set those goals intelligently. So you understand like what are your goals for profit margin, not just top line revenue, but for profit, right? So you would have to set those goals for return of investment, for the velocity of the money, so you can protect your cash flow, so you don't cash trap the business. Like, so I hate to make this sound like it's overcomplicated. The truth is, gang, is there's a big difference between your practice and your business. And in my experience, chiropractors do not lay awake at night worrying about their practice. They lay awake at night worrying about their business. Okay. And that's what we help doctors with. We coach people not just on how to build a remarkable practice, but how to create a remarkable business that will support your remarkable life and not compete with it. That's a big part of the conversation. Profit.
Huge part. This is why Doc continues to come on the show, because we could sit here for like 6 to 7 hours and just go all in on it. And we may just do that someday, just you in on it. Doc, I appreciate you being here, though, man. Always massive value, guys. This is in the show notes. It's linked to the Remarkable website. Check them out. Just be curious on their events. I'll tell you what, from going there, it's a group of massively like-minded individuals.
That's right.
Not a bad group, not a bad person in the group. And if there is a bad person, they typically see themselves out just based on the laws of good culture, right?
Yeah,
So
Jeff, if I could add, like, I want to make sure that people know that you're probably listened to around the world. That's the power of the podcast. But we have our Remarkable Attraction, our marketing event in both Denver in the US, and that's the October 4th and 5th event. But we're also in Adelaide, Australia, November 1st and 2nd. So, about 26% of our business, of our clients, are in Australasia. So we actually hold 3 events a year over there as well. So if you're listening to this on that side of the world, I should say in that hemisphere, come on and join us in Adelaide. So November 1st and 2nd, our boots on the ground team is going to be throwing an awesome Remarkable Attraction Immersion, our marketing event for the Aussies crowd as well.
super cool. I love that. Guys, that's no excuse not to join at some point. Doc, always massive value. We'll make sure to link out all of the resources today in the show notes. We'll also put a little blurb in there about their upcoming events, both in the States in Denver and also out in Australia. And you guys, as usual, if you guys got value, number one, make sure you follow Doc and his team. He's got an Instagram account. You can find him on Facebook, theremarkablepractice.com, anywhere to find and get value from him.
CEO podcast. That's the big one. Like, so if you guys liked this conversation, you're going to love the Remarkable CEO podcast, because this is what we do. This conversation right here is very representative.
Matter of fact, we'll actually link the Remarkable CEO show out in the show notes as well for you guys, just for quick access. Another great tool. There's endless free stuff in terms of what's value given on this show and that show, and now it's all about taking this stuff and actually executing. I appreciate you being here, Doc. And if you guys got value, as always, share the show forward, send it to somebody who needs it, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Appreciate you being here, Dr. Franson.
Thank you, brother. God bless. Thank you for
Oh,
asking me.
cheers.